So, just going to get right into it.
There's plenty.
I'm just going to say the name, Rachel Dolezal.
Rachel.
Now, this young lady, apparently she was the chapter president for, I believe, Spokane, Washington chapter. She was also an Eastern Washington University African education professor. So, some weird goings on with this woman. And what I'm going to do, because it's so much, I'm just going to touch on the topical parts of it. And then later on in Wryn Monroe's segment, she'll be getting deep into the meat of the subject.
Yeah.
So apparently, Miss Rachel, and I guess I'm going to say it, she's been passing as black.
As black.
And you know how odd that is. It's just the opposite of, some African Americans who used to or wanted to pass for white.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have already referred to her as being in blackface. So here's my thing. This is just what I want to get into. I'm very concerned about her deceitfulness, her actions. Why couldn't this woman just approach the NAACP, who, by the way, was founded by Caucasians?
Yes.
So why couldn't she just come correct? And, hi, my name is Rachel Dolezal. And, hey, I have my credentials. I can do this job. Chances are she probably would have, got the seat anyway. Mm-hmm. So why go through all this rigmarole? I mean, for years and years, deceiving people. Now, I don't know what's going on with her psychologically, because that's not my field. I'm not going to try to figure it out. But just overall, it was very sneaky.
Very sneaky.
So, I mean, what's your take, Wryn?
Very deceitful. I don't think that she in any way represents most white people. I do think this is a very specific psychological case. Mm-hmm. Like something's wrong with her.
Right.
You know what I mean?
A lot.
A lot is wrong.
Right.
And when you just take a glance at her history, just still with the topical, subjects.
Sure.
Supposedly she was abused. She was homeschooled by her parents and abused by them. Supposedly she was told to beat her other black siblings with plumbing supply line and 2 feet of long glue sticks. So she was supposedly made to beat them. Mm-hmm. We know that she's an artist. And her art is on display at the United Nations, I believe.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you seen any of it?
I've seen only a few. It's quite nice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but some of it, people are saying, is actually plagiarized. So
well,
there's the deceitfulness again.
See, I mean, so once you get into that lane of, being deceitful and sneaky, it's hard for people to see you otherwise, even if, maybe that's not up your sleeve anymore. So I'd like to take a look at the art. Not that I'm an art expert, but yeah. I wouldn't put it past her. And you see, this is what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. People are strange. We know that, but this little bird is very peculiar.
She hurts my head.
It's just, it's too
I don't
much
know what to do
going
with
on.
her. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I have a story to share, and, I feel okay talking about it now because I'm more mature and I can handle things. It doesn't threaten me anymore. But when we're talking about identity, I don't know the term for it. You might know a sociological term for it. But as a young girl, I guess probably the summer of my 8th grade, maybe summer of the 7th grade going into the 8th grade. And I don't know if I mentioned it on some of the other shows, but I'm going to go with what Raina was talking about last week. Not so much the bullying, but she encountered the bullying from her African-American sisters.
Yes.
Not from any other outside people or groups. So obviously in my family, I was very fair-skinned, very, very. And, I didn't have nothing to do with that. That's not my fault. Mm-hmm. But growing up around my other cousins, they're a little darker, different shades of black. We got all the shades. Love it. But, I was ostracized. I was picked on. You yellow banana, you half white, you this and that, and I didn't really think that it would bother me, but obviously it did. So my whole thing one summer was it's the summertime. Maybe I could get a real dark tan and, be darker. So I set out that summer, thought that I was doing something. So I decided, I said, well, to add more oomph to it, I'm not going to wash my face. I'm not going to wash my face because if I have that extra layer and then if I'm in the sun, it's just going to bake it in and I'm going to be set. So I tried to do that for about 2 or 3 days until my grandmother came and she was like, come here, girl. Wait a minute, come here. Something's not right. So anyway, she squashed that. So I had to wash my face, but I didn't tell her why I wasn't washing my face because that would have been automatic. Something else going on there. But just to make a long story short, so I'm not sure, I'm going to say my situation is far less complicated than our girl Rachel's. But I'm kind of, trying to see both sides because, like I said, I don't know what's really going on in her head or what she's been through or where she's from, So I just shared that with you all because I know how some things can trigger different actions, but I was a very young girl then. This is a grown woman and a professor, not that means anything, but so it's just.
Well, your story shows a couple of things. One, had we added, thankfully, I hope this wasn't the case, but were extreme abuse added in the mix of you, who knows what you might do, to become darker. Who knows if you were actually, like, I'm going to say physically abused or what, in alignment with the bullying, if that had happened. Right. The other thing it shows is for any given person, if you watch something long enough, you'll want to become it. I hear stories about people who are white in Hawaii, and in Hawaii, apparently, there is anti-white sentiment is rampant. And so for the white folks who are there and grow up there, there's this tendency to want to be more brown. Why? Because who doesn't want to be accepted in what they're around all the time? This Rachel, though.
But was she around where
Let's just look at she's a young girl growing up, and then suddenly your parents bring in not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 African-American siblings.
And were they men? Boys?
I think there's one who's a girl.
Okay, but
I'm not certain. I don't want to.
Oh,
So I'll just show like this one part of it. The way personality develops is, in the beginning, consider you are what we call tabula rasa, blank slate. There's nothing there. You either have consciousness, but there's nothing assigned. It's just there. You're just there. Right. The other thing that's there is the biological part. So if I were to take a baby and just kind of throw it away in an attic or put it in a jungle and not give it any social input, that baby would become something called a feral child. It means it would only eat, sleep, drink, pleasure itself incessantly, actually. There would be no language. It wouldn't recognize you. There's no empathy. If you don't have social input, the kid just, it's not there. And some of these kids have been raised by animals. Like if you throw it out there, there are goats that raise the child because they just see it as another. I'm serious.
True.
And there was a famous case in, her name is Jeannie. She was in Arcadia, California. She was thrown away from like a few months old all the way up through 13. So this does happen, unfortunately. The reason I bring it up is that's how important social input is to who you are.
Right.
And so for this Rachel, who knows what happened to her as a baby, but certainly we know that by the time she's 15, we have all these black people moving in. You're told to abuse the black children. You were once the white child with your other brother who's also full brother white.
Right.
Now, what does all of this mean? She's homeschooled, allegedly abused. The father was brought up on charges of felony theft, but those were dropped. A strange family. So could it be that her hardcore embrace of blackness is a survival mechanism in her situation?
Well, when you put it like that, I could see it. I can see it that way.
And there's no excuse for appropriating black pain. I'm not stepping over that.
No, right.
Doesn't work for me.
Now, I saw her parents were being interviewed by several journalists and news stations and so forth. And I just caught a little bit of the conversation, but apparently her mother claims, and this is just going on the topical stuff because I don't know. I didn't do any of that, the family investigating stuff, but her mother claims that Rachel is or has been doing this to get back at them. And based on some of the things that you brought up, I could see the anger there, but to go to this extreme, you see. But yeah, there's a lot going on there. But the thing too is, her parents knew that this woman was the chapter president in Spokane for years and years.
Yes.
So why now, would they decide to come forth? And it's not up to me to bear the feelings of other parents and the reasons why they would come forth and talk about their daughter. But obviously, they knew that something was going on. How could you not know? And then why is it so important that you bring this up now?
Well, I think according to Dolezal, Rachel, she says that her brother, her biological white brother, is accused of molesting a black child.
One of theirs?
No,
or someone else. Okay.
Another. But she took the side of the black child and is an advocate for the black child against the brother. The family comes in and says, "How dare you?" Well, first of all, you're white. Let's be clear.
Wait a minute.
I mean, we're laughing.
It's not funny, but really, it's like, okay, wait a minute, girl. You know what you are.
Right.
Right.
Right. So we're watching this horrible tragedy just unfold.
Well, it's, I'm interested. I feel sad. Really, I mean, we're talking about this, but obviously there's some things going on with this woman that deserves more discussion and conversation around, because it's not even so much, her affiliation with the NAACP. I'm talking about this person as an individual. It's like, what? What happened, poor thing? I mean, really, because like I said, I don't excuse her being deceitful.
No.
Okay, because she knew what she was doing there.
Right.
But I feel for her, because for someone to be, led to this state of mind like she's in now, that she's been passing or for whatever reason, is very scary to me, and I feel very bad.
Well, here's the thing I can't get past, okay? There's this, I'm reading some of the comments in the social site community, blah, blah, blah. And there's this notion of we're all one race, we're all human, and we are. But
we ain't
problem
running
with
the
that,
same race.
The problem with it, what did you say?
I said we're not running the same race.
Oh,
we're all humans.
that's
right.
a nice play on the word race. Like, yeah, that's pretty good, Valerie.
You got that.
I did get that one.
Sometimes Wryn,
Okay.
as smart as she is,
Yeah.
we have a little work to do with her. But we'll
Things
talk
go
about
over
that
my
later.
head, all
Yeah.
right? But yeah, so I get we're the human race, but because of racism, white supremacy, the ideology, not the people. I'm always very clear about that. Racism, white supremacy is like a cancer of consciousness, and it will affect white people and people of color. I'm very clear about that, not
Right.
the people. So people, when you write me, don't say I said white.
Right.
I'm talking about white supremacy. Because of that, and this is what gets me, whatever nation you go in, the darker people are in bottom. That's colonialization.
True.
I'm not happy with that. I'm never going to rest until that is overturned. So she can't appropriate my pain,
Right.
my black pain, the black pain or the pain of people of color, and that she thinks she can do that is white privilege. That's my issue, and I'm not going to step over that.
Well, you know what?
She can rip that wig off and let the tan go and walk right on into alone, live where she wants to live tomorrow.
Do whatever she wants to do, right? And I totally understand that, and that does anger me.
Yeah.
And I started to watch an interview that she did a couple of years ago, and she was talking about the black woman's pain, how hard it is for a black woman, and of course she's passing us, but she's talking about her pain too, and obviously she has some pain, but not the kind that we live with, that we're born with, and I don't like to put that up as some kind of award or banner. It's like, look, we're in pain, so that's not what I'm saying. But it's like, how dare you?
Right.
How dare you go that far? You can tell me about my pain?
Right.
But
Yeah,
people are weird.
Well, yeah, so she kind of gets on my nerves. But I want to say a little bit more about, let's say, personality development, just to kind of be fair. Oh, let me go here, too. For the white person, and I always say they suffer from white supremacy, too. As long as we say, and we being people of color and white folks, actually buy into white supremacy, that white is somehow better, we never look at the needs of white people. That is huge. We never look at that we live in a world where that's browning. We never look at how there's always a conversation. There's black culture and white culture and Latino culture, whatever, always in conversation. They are human beings, meaning white people. It's affecting them too. True. They have brains. The information's getting in there too. So we're not looking at the impact of that.
That's right.
Because we always think,
us.
Well, but we're always thinking white is, the standard, but we don't look at the needs.
Right.
Yeah,
see,
so
this is why Wryn Monroe is a part of our family now, because she puts it out there, and I like that you show different perspectives.
Yeah.
Because we need that. We can't be one-sided, and there are topics that we discuss on the show that warrant the other side.
Exactly.
That warrant another point of view, so that we're all in tune and that we're whole.
And with personality development, I will come back to that and then be quiet. I know, but so with that, okay, so remember I said in the beginning we're just consciousness, or like the body runs itself, right? And then there's social input. The thing is, what is it that makes you a self? Do you remember becoming a self? If the baby is just there looking around doing goo goo gaga, when is it that personality enters? And it enters when finally, somewhere around 5 years old, the brain is developed to a point that it's a real fascinating time, actually. It grows to 90% of its capacity.
Really, at that age?
And it's called myelination. The brain is taking on this and that, and it's exploding, and it's looking at color, and it's looking at, language is taking in everything. So what that means is the stuff that's been happening around you suddenly has a new meaning. Something happens, and you think something's wrong with you for the first time in your life around 5 years old. Everybody goes back to 5 years old.
And that's... And I can remember.
We go,
because that's the place. That's the aha age, right?
That's the aha age.
Wow.
And it could be younger or older, but I'm saying that's the one. And so what happens is, though, you remember when I talked about those emotions that we have, the 12?
Sure.
Happy, sad, anger, fear, surprise, disgust, anxiety, contempt, confusion, and clarity or hope. And then shame and guilt, which is on one side, and then you want admiration on the other. These get ripped open. Whatever that one thing is that happened where you're like, oh, you mean something's wrong with me?
Right.
All those centers get activated.
Pandora's box.
It's Pandora's box. And whatever you do to survive it, whatever thoughts you have about yourself at that time, whatever you think about the world at that time, we never leave it. We keep living it forever and ever and ever. So with this dolazol, maybe she turned to art to survive.
Well, let's make sure it's her art.
She clearly...
Let's make sure it's her art.
That's funny.
So what we're going to do is, this is so juicy, and always Wryn has lots to say on the sociological point of view. We're going to go into the Kettle Black Wryn Monroe show segment. We're going to take a little pause for the cause, and then we're going to come back, and she's going to discuss in more depth what might be going on with Miss Rachel. Okay. So with that, we'll be right back.
This is the Wryn Monroe segment. Welcome, welcome. So we've been talking about Rachel Dolezal. I'm in the studio with Valerie B.
Hello.
And we covered sort of the individual side of this woman, but in the Wryn Monroe segment, I want to talk about society. Of course, that's my passion. And I want to talk about how racial identity is formed at all.
Well, let's get with it, because you have to teach us.
Well, all right, we'll dig in. So for racial identity formation for Black people, this is the work called the Cross Racial Identity Scale. And it's by, of course, William E. Cross in 1971. It's also known as nigrescence theory. Easy to Google, and it'll all be there. And so according to him, there are 4 stages. The first one is called the pre-encounter stage. This is where you just are where you are. Either you're born into a family where you're more assimilated to white culture, and that's the way you know. And that one is kind of like, I'm an American. You don't really put African American in front of it. You accept the negative stereotypes about Black people, but you never apply them to yourself.
Wow.
Right? That's the stage of just kind of pro-white affiliation. Or you could have been born into more of a Black-centric, family, but you would have more of an anti-Black sentiment still. So this is weird. In this stage, you might be miseducated. That's where I was. It's where I loved being Black, but I just felt like we had so much wrong with us. If only we could
And so you
fix
just
this.
kind of want to just dismiss it or shake it off, or
You could want to
or
do that.
ignore it?
Well, it's internalized. So part of me is, I'm sad. If only we spoke better. If only we wouldn't stay away from the drugs and just forget that the system pumped the drugs into the
Right,
community.
of course.
Forget that. If you could just work harder, there's so much wrong. Or self-hatred, where you just straight up hate being black.
So there's a thin line.
There's a thin line. There's a thin line. So that's the first stage, and people are kind of already there, right? Depending on family. The next one is not really an identity, but it's called encounter. So remember when I was talking about there's always something that happens that shifts you in another direction.
Right.
This is called an encounter. It's an experience or a series of experiences, and it causes you to have to reevaluate. But what does it do? It rips open those emotions again. You're emotional this time.
Is it the same experience or just different experiences?
It could be different ones.
Okay.
Like you're being teased for being light-skinned.
Yellow banana.
Aw.
Oh,
I don't
they
like that.
they called me names.
That's not cool. I was called white girl all
No,
day
look at
long.
that.
But what happened? The friends wouldn't talk to me. I shifted even more toward a
So they
pro-white.
pushed you.
Exactly. So
Right.
you kind of choose. So this one is forcing you because of the emotion to choose something. So then the next part of it is either you immerse yourself in a culture deep, like you go all the way in. That could be white or black culture, or you come all the way out. If you go in one, you're going to come out of the other. You see what I mean? So it's kind of like either you romanticize being black. Oh, black, we're the best. We're actually the superior race.
Right.
Black people cannot truly be free until we rid ourselves of whites. This kind of, or you can go the other way where you just really hate white people and everything. It can get their levels, right?
Is that
Yes.
more like the Aryans? Well,
That would be the other side.
right, the other side.
Yeah,
right.
that's a great example. They would hate black, Jew.
Just hate, right.
Yeah. So same thing. They're immersed in something, and they usually, regardless to what side you're on, you reject any kind of multicultural and all this kumbaya. Let's all no. There's no kumbaya.
We
here.
don't want it because that's what they don't want.
Right.
Okay.
So we covered, there's the first one where you're either already into a pro-white or pro-black situation, then something happens and you go full on into one, which means you reject the other. That's the immersion. And then the final part, after you get through the pain, is something called internalization. And finally, it's like, you know what? I love being black and I can see other people. Or, you know what? I love being white and I can see other people. I can see the need in the Puerto Rican community. I can still, this Rachel, it would have been nice if she would just be white.
She could probably have done better for the African Americans. I mean, if she'd have put, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Right. So that is the goal of the internalization stage. Here you do have the black nationalists. They are considered internalized. Why? Because they concentrate their energy on empowering the black community, but they don't have to hate another community. Right? Then there's the biculturalist. This is where you might have the black nationalist feminist, but they're concerned about black women. So then you kind of add that. And then it goes on. If you're multi, then you might say, I'm a black Puerto Rican feminist. There's always layers to it where you're concerned about the Puerto Rican community and black and womanhood. So there's always layers. But the point is, you love yourself, you're fighting your activism for yourself, but you don't have to hate somebody else. So that's the black racial identity. It's called the cross-racial identity scale, again, 4 stages. Pre-encounter, which is either you're born pro-white, pro-black, not born, but in the family of pro-white, pro-black. Then something happens, that's the encounter stage, and you're kind of thrown deeply into one side or the other because it's emotional. Then you finally go full-on and immerse yourself in one of the cultures or the other. Then you kind of start to wake up and just internalize it and say, you know what, I'm just a human being, and I matter. And
So then, Rachel, is she at the 3rd stage?
honey, where is Rachel?
Well, what I'm saying is because she has totally immersed
Well, you know
herself.
what? She is.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right.
Because then she ain't woke up yet and said,
No,
oh,
she
okay, now
hasn't.
I got it. Let
I
me get
think
myself together
she's at the
here.
3rd stage, and it's very
Do you-
emotional for her.
Do you think it's possible, or do people ever, once they go through something that traumatic, like she's going through, obviously this lady has some issues, do they ever make it to the 4th stage to where they wake up and say, wait a minute, okay, I'm okay with myself as who I am, I could still embrace this culture, I could still, so does it happen often that people reach the 4th
It
stage?
does happen often. That's another great question. These stages, I did list them in order, but they don't have to occur in order.
Okay. Also, people can go
You
backwards.
can go.
Oh, we're trying to move forward.
We're trying to move forward. I know. But they don't occur necessarily in order. That's the likely order, but anything can happen and throw you in another direction.
Right. That's true. That's true.
So now we covered the black one. And because of my friend Ray, I want to make sure you guys know the source. I love that he asked for that. Again, the cross-racial identity scale. And you can look it up, and the authors are Vandiver, Cross, Warwell. Shout out to UC Berkeley because he's over there. And Fagan Smith. Okay, so now everybody knows. Now let's move to the racial identity for white people. This work is called the White Racial Identity Attitude Scale, and this work is by Janet Helms in 1990. And her book is called Black and White Racial Identity, Theory, Research, and Practice. So now let's see what they propose happens for white Americans or for white people. At first, they are in, supposedly, according to her, a stage that she calls contact. And this is when the people are usually unaware of racism or white privilege, and they really don't even know racial slurs. Like, it's just not, they're not walking around trying to find racial things to say. They're mostly around other white people in their circles. And if they do have black friends, those friends tend to be in that stage where we have self-hatred, miseducation, or just the I'm just an American but not black. That stage would never challenge them to look at actual racial disparity.
Right, because they're immersed.
They're
not
in a pro-white orientation anyway,
and they want to be there.
Right? So that's how they might have a few friends, but there is no challenge. And
well, let me ask just real quick. So, in a situation like that where you have the Caucasians and they have some African American friends who desperately want to be approved by them, who want to be their friends, would those same Caucasians be willing or, let's say, invite those blacks over to like family functions, or would they keep them in the background?
And you mean you're saying black people who really, really want to be white?
Yeah.
That's fine.
No. I'm saying
the
whites who have black friends like that.
They would have them over, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely. That's the kind that's Bryant Gumbel. He can go. Okay. My militant self, I can't go.
Oh, no, well,
okay. To this particular group of people.
True.
Yeah, but no, that's the kind.
Yeah, he'd
and
be
then
okay.
That's when you say, well, I have these black friends. I'm not racist.
Oh, that's where that comes from.
Yeah.
So I have two of them.
And then the other thing is, but you're not like most black people. That's the stage of contact. But we want to be mindful. People are where they are. They're born into this stuff off. Not born like this way, but we were born into families and societies that already have this there. So that's the first stage for white people, kind of colorblind, right?
Right.
Then, according to this author, they go into something called disintegration. Now, what's happening? You're starting to have a little bit more contact with other kinds of people of color, not just the ones who are always pro, white orientation. They still have a majority of white friends, but there's just a little bit more.
They're letting a little bit more in.
Or even if they don't let it, it's moving in anyway, in the community. And by the way, most of these folks in this category get their information from media. Because they're not.
There's a problem.
There's a huge problem, right? So they believe that.
Is it that they're not willing to reach out and, explore and welcome in other?
I think.
Or are they afraid, or they just don't want to?
All that could be, but when I say, I want to address the willing. If you're just in an all-white town and you've been there most of your life, you don't even get to willing because there's no.
Right. It is.
It is. Right. And
okay,
so it's not something's wrong with the person.
Right.
Or why don't you just yet? I used to think that. Mm-hmm. Oh, why don't you just
right?
learn
But it's
more?
like just what?
Just
this
what?
Is it.
Everybody.
Right. I got you.
Right. So in this particular one, they're starting to wake up a little bit more, and the color blindness, they're not saying that as much, but still now the pain is starting to ease in of white supremacy and the actual history. So they want to still blame the blacks or the Mexicans for what's happening with them. It's not quite responsibility yet. It's they, but at least there's an awareness, right? What did you want to say?
No.
Oh, you were saying? And then the other part of it is now, because this particular group of white people, right, they're now moving from colorblindness into seeing the disparity and the pain, the emotion is building, and then it's going to climax. And when the emotion gets really, really huge, they go right back full on into white supremacy. It's painful. The guilt, the rage, the blame. Who wants to stand up and say, yes, my grandfather raped all your whole family and I benefit from it, and oh well.
And there's shame to that.
There is.
There's a lot of shame. And with shame comes pain.
With a lot of, yes,
Right.
a lot of pain, humiliation.
Right.
And these are the emotions that I always say, if we could just learn to experience them and let them pass, we would be so much better off. But the knee-jerk reaction for any human being is to run like the wind away from having to feel this. Black, white, or whatever, you want to run. And so by the time they're in this stage, it's this real clutch on to white supremacy again. Again, motivated by guilt, fear, and shame and anger. You can hear the humanness in it.
Right.
And so they idealize whiteness. So that is that first part for this author. But then we have a lot of hope on the horizon. The next phase for them is something called pseudo-independence. And this is finally when white people say, well, let's at least look. Let's question this notion of inferiority of minority people. Let's question the word minority. Because we are the minority.
Well,
yeah, everyone else is of color. Let's start to really look at it. Let's have a sincere. Let's make the NAACP.
okay.
Let's
so
have
is that
a
this stuff is
sincere-
done? Is it done? How do I say? Is it happening out of guilt, or do they actually want to do these things, or is
love
that
your
just a
question.
trigger?
It is out of guilt. However, you're catching it right in transition over to a positive emotion, right there. The guilt's there, but now they're willing to address the guilt.
But it's
in a-
just still
It's still
thin
there.
line. Oh.
It's still there.
And so they overcompensate a little bit by, is that what you would call a bleeding heart, liberal kind of, just
You
wanting
know,
to overdo
I don't
it?
even know enough about that whole.
Right. So what I'm saying is, is a lot
I
of it
can
triggered by
see
the
that,
guilt?
I guess. Yeah, definitely by guilt. And the strange thing is, did they actually lynch somebody? No, but they know that they have benefited. White privilege is because of slavery.
Right.
That's why there's privilege. So that's where the guilt comes in. It doesn't mean they hanged someone yesterday. But that's what people like to say. I didn't do it. Well, I mean, you do.
Right.
Because it's all set up that
Did you
way.
do anything to prevent it?
Yeah,
So-
right.
right.
So now you're starting to see that, and then they then immerse themselves in a very healthy way where they start to say, this is also emotionally intense. It's soul searching for them. You got to really sit down and, if I'm white and have all this privilege, and I'm looking at all that supposedly white people have done all over the world to people of color, what does it mean to be white?
I'd be.
What is it?
Be shame.
Well, but how? Yes, but how can they move to past the shame? How do you move to just being human? How do you do that? You know what I mean? So in this particular stage, there's an honest reflection of what it means to be white. They are associated with some pain and guilt, but the dominant emotion this time is hope and motivation. It's replacing the guilt, and the focus shifts to, well, what can white people do? How can we change white people? That's when, and then their final stage is full-on autonomy when it says, I'm white. Yes, I've benefited from privilege. Yes, I really get it. You know, what's happened to other people. Yes, I'm going to fight for what's right, and I'm white doing it, which is where we wish Dolezal had been in the first place.
So just that's a phase of being honest, just
Being
facing the
honest.
truth and
Yeah.
loving yourself for who
and
you
loving
are.
yourself for who you are.
Right.
That's the ideal.
Wow. So now where is Miss Rachel at? You said this.
Now we're looking at the white identity on this part.
Oh, okay.
And where would I put her? She's not autonomy because she doesn't even
No,
embrace
well,
being
she's all
white.
over the place.
Where is the child? I think she's got to come all the way back to, no, she's aware of race. I guess she's going to be reintegration, except she went into whiteness instead of blackness. She's full on trying to put her fist in the air.
Yeah. Well, she hasn't said much. You know, I'm, or at least I haven't saw any postings or anything, or heard any interviews. I think that she's declined
She did an interview with Melissa Harris Perry.
recently.
It was pretty in depth.
And okay, and I don't mean to get off of.
No,
what
this
you're
is
talking
fine
about.
because I
So
covered
what
it,
did
'cause I
she
didn't
have
like
to
that
say?
interview at all.
What were they like? Kind of patting her on the back?
Melissa
or-
Harris Perry, and I think she's MSNBC or wherever she
Oh
is.
yeah.
Here's the thing. Her mom is white and happens to have been from Spokane. Melissa is very close to this, and her interviewing skills, in my opinion, were horrible and went out the window, and she was way too acquiescent and soft, and I thought it was... So she'll ask a difficult question, and then Rachel won't even answer the question. Like she said, well, what's up with your hair? Because
Right.
we know black women have suffered because of our hair. Rachel says, well, my sister was here and I learned how to do hair and braid her hair. She's always talking about someone else and how she's helping someone else, and not the fact that she's sitting up there with an African-American looking wig on.
Right.
Okay. And she learned how to do white hair. She went to art school to learn how to do the black art. She has studied black people to a degree where all of her answers ping in the mind as perfectly sound.
Right.
But
So
you
she
never
did-
get to who she is.
Right. She didn't take any responsibility. Well, it
In
never
my
even
opinion,
came
not
up.
an ounce.
Right.
Not an ounce. And Melissa let it slide. Sorry, I like you,
Right.
but you let that one slide,
Right.
sister.
Wow.
Yeah, she let it slide.
Okay, so come more goodies.
Well, so I just want to make sure people follow, because this is a lot of information. We covered now the white racial identity attitude scale. Again, that's from Janet Helms, 1990, if people don't look it up. And we just covered that white folks start off with kind of this color blindness and not really a lot of black friends. Not everybody, but this is the way this scale goes. And remember, you can be in any phase at any time.
Right, so it's not in order.
So for those who do, and then eventually they start being with a few more people of color who aren't just, oh, I'm happy to be American and not black, whatever, you know. And they get challenged a little bit. The emotion starts to build a little bit, like, wait a minute, what is this inequality thing? But they still have majority white friends, right?
I get it.
And then eventually they move into a phase where they still have a lot more diversity around them. They really start to question, and it becomes extremely painful. And then they double clutch back to white supremacy to survive the pain, right? You don't want to.
They
and
can
then
fall back
eventually-
on that, yeah.
you go back, and then finally, they start moving into a part where they start to really become a little bit more independent from white supremacy, and start looking into, well, how can we really question it and grow into our own autonomy and so on and so forth. So this is just not like it's the law, but just to look at how there are different phases for people to get a racial identity,
Right.
and it's a painful process.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are the main take-home points. Now, if I can, in the last few minutes here, I want to just touch on, while we're talking about Dolezal, the Dominican Republic is trying to ship off 100,000 Haitians. That's really a great example of how white supremacy does not have to be in a white body. The Dominican Republic it started off as the sugar, with the sugar plantations. However, they didn't stay with sugar. Eventually, they went over to cattle ranching. So what that means is, instead of having the chattel slavery, it moved to a point where the black men and white men were a little bit more equal. You have your own cattle. You each have a machete.
Right.
I have one, you have one kind of thing. They developed totally differently, and eventually the white people left the Dominican Republic. Everybody there is either mulatto or black, but you wouldn't tell them they're black. They don't identify with that.
Right.
They say they're Spanish. And so with the Haitians we're African through and through and through. And honey, even though they have a Dominican parent, Dominican Republic parent, they're kicking the Haitians out. 100,000.
Where are they?
Go back to Haiti, which they were never in Haiti. They were born in the Dominican Republic. Haiti speaks French, Dominican Republic
just
Spanish.
kicking these people. You got to go.
You have to get out. But it's not the first time it's happened. Their leader, way back in the day, General Trujillo, was obsessed with whiteness, powdered his skin to appear white, even though he also has Haitian descent. And this is where the white supremacy comes in through this brown body and says lighter skin is better than the darker skin and blah, blah, blah. So I just kind of want to point, somewhere else where this is, for me, far more important than Dolezal.
That sounds like a whole nother chapter on the Wryn segment, because that's deep. I mean,
That's
that puts
really
me in
deep.
mind of some things that went on in Germany.
Oh, exactly that way.
We'll talk about that in another show. I
Exactly
mean,
that
this
way.
is your thing. So
Yeah, exactly. So, I know I covered a lot. I will say my producers are going to put this show up on YouTube. So if you want to be able to listen to it, it should be ready in the next 2 weeks to listen to all the shows.
Wonderful.
For people to say, what did she say again?
That's great because, it's your show, but I get a lot of feedback. People are waiting to hear what Wryn has to say, and moving forward, I am too. I'm always ready to listen.
Well, I really appreciate everything. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. So, what do we cover? We don't know what's going on next week, huh? We could have another Rachel by next week.
Well, there's so much going on, and I'm sure that you have, like I said, tons of topics up your sleeves. So we're excited to see what's going to happen with that.
Okay, well, definitely. Well, thanks for tuning in. We love you, and we appreciate all of our guests. And tune in next week.
All right. Thank you, Wryn.
Thank you.